Okay, Bruchim Habayim, welcome everyone. It's a real pleasure to see you all here. We have an amazing, very special, and very unique evening. Something which I've never seen. A couple working together of the caliber of the couple we have tonight. A powerhouse. All I know is this, that they must love you if they schlepped all the way here together with very, very busy lives. But more about them in just a moment. You may have realized that tonight was meant to be a schut merit for the refuah shlema of Mordechai, ben Yehoshua, Mr. Mordechai Sharifian. However, Hashem has other plans. And of course, Shana Sharifian really, really wanted to be here. This is her dearly and beloved uncle, a father's brother, Allah Shalom, L'Havl ben Chaim L'Chaim. So she could not be here, but I promise you, there's a lot going on in her life right now, and yet she wrote to me, and is everything good? Is everyone good? Is the food there? I mean, she really invests her life in these events and these programs, which she has done for many years now, Baruch Hashem, is in her zchut. And what can we say? Her family was sponsoring tonight for Refuah Shlema, and today, her uncle was niftar, Allah Shalom Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. So tonight, of course, will be, God willing, Bezrat Hashem, an aliyah from the neshama of Mordechai ben Yehoshua, Mr. Mordechai Sharifian, and Yaakov ben Yosef. And it's a tremendous zchut for us to be here this evening, right? For whatever reason, Hashem decided that each and every one of you should be here to be part of this program. Okay, with that being said, we have an amazing experience this evening. We have a wonderful couple, a powerhouse. Each one of them is extremely successful in their own right. First of all, we'll start with the better half, Rebbe Nalini Ibragimov, who is here. She runs a house, she does classes and programs. We just did a trip to Morocco. People are still talking about the impact that she had on the participants at the program. Her and my wife sat and talked about dating with everyone the entire time. That's not her, it's my wife. And really, everyone who comes into contact with her absolutely gains so much from her. She said to me before she started, she says, Rabbi, I have nothing to say. I said, you're a Sephardi woman, you'll find something to talk about. Baruch Hashem, it's the koach of our people, Baruch Hashem. They're always able to say what needs to be said. I don't doubt that for a second. She's brought with her this evening her husband, who, as well as being a very, very good friend of mine, and according to 23andMe, family as well, although I've seen no money from him whatsoever, so it is what it is. I'm a little sus. Actually, maybe that's proof that he is family, of course. It's, of course, my dear friend, Rabbi Reuven Ibragimov, who does so much for so many communities. When he was in Brooklyn and the Five Towns and Manhattan and Safra, and he started with me here at Great Neck, and everyone just fell in love with him. So this is the first time that I know of that these fantastic couple have got together to give a shiur together. So really, take advantage. Ask them questions, get involved, listen. It's a rare opportunity. I don't know if it's going to happen ever again, right? God willing it will. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome our very, very special guest, and we're going to give them a really special, amazing, great neck welcome. Rabbi Reuven and Nalini Ibragimov.
Thank you very much for the warm introduction, and as always, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm not really sure where to start. I just want to start by first, it's a difficult topic. We're speaking about joy and navigating life's challenges through joy, which it's an appropriate topic for this time of the year because it's the month of Adar, but it's also a difficult day because tonight was supposed to be a refuah shlema for Mordechai ben Yehoshua. But unfortunately, it's not. And when we go through challenges in life, hardships, it's very hard to feel any type of joy, which is I think a meaningful segue into the topic, because We know there's a famous Jewish idea of mitzvah tamid lihiyot b'simcha, that there's this idea that we're supposed to be b'simcha always, tamid. It's a quote from Rabbi Nachman, which is made famous by all the songs that we sing, mitzvah tamid lihiyot b'simcha. Now, what does that mean? Is that even possible? Is it possible to be in a state of simcha all the time? Is that even healthy? And I think and the truth is that, in many ways, this topic is so important because it was only last week, it was February 14th, about a little bit less than 2 weeks ago, the CDC put out some startling statistics about the mental health of young women specifically, more so than men. So that 3 out of 5 women are having like more negative thoughts than positive thoughts, and 1 out of 3 women have had. These are all teenage girls, by the way. These are teenagers. 1 out of 3 teenage girls have had suicidal thoughts in the last 12 months, which is like a crazy number. 1 out of 3. And this is definitely like a mental health crisis in the United States of America. The suicide rate in this country is going up. It moved from number 7 to number 6 as a cause of death. The 6th place for the 6th cause of death in the United States used to be diabetes, and now suicide has taken it. Which means in America, you have a higher chance of killing yourself than you do of dying of diabetes, which is like a crazy statement to make. Wow. And this is, having said all that, think of it in the context of where you are. You're living in the greatest, most affluent, most comfortable country, time in history. You have everything you could possibly imagine and more. And yet with all of that, with all that we have, the last 100 years of progress in psychology and mental health, somehow the numbers are not better. The silver lining is that when they did this global happiness index in 2017, Israel was the 11th most happy place in the world, right? Which is kind of interesting considering that they had so much going for them that was against happiness, like constant war, murder, nations trying to destroy them. So somehow they were able to find this level of happiness, and they're still happier in Israel. You're happier living in Israel with the threat of terror and death than you are in the United States of America, where you have all the luxuries and the comforts you could possibly imagine. So what are we doing wrong? What happened?
No, this is great.
Okay, great. I need that encouragement. The first key to being happy is having a supportive wife. Someone who's loving, caring. She's so awesome. Thank you.
I'm glad we're on stage.
Because I also felt that impact on the Morocco trip, but it was on my left cheek. What's it called? Where was I? What did I say? It was so good.
Israel's back.
Oh, Israel. Oh, that's right. Okay, fine. Terror. So I want to explain to you why I think it's so difficult. I want to give a little bit of an introduction. I want to give not a definition, because I don't think you can. I think it's very hard to define happiness. I have a couple ideas of how to express it in a way that's meaningful, but I want to share it via like a concept of happiness. What happiness is as far as a concept, but I want to explain why it's so difficult to understand it, what true happiness is. I'm going to give you two metaphors, okay? So you have a child. Can everyone hear me? Am I speaking loud enough? Yes. Okay. You have a child who's an orphan, and he's nothing. He's alone. He's young. A local man in the community finds out it's his child. He's very affluent. He's wealthy, and he decides to adopt his child. The child is taken in. He's fed. He's clothed. He's given everything the child could possibly imagine. He has everything. I mean, everything. And he's successful himself. Years go by, and there's a constant ability to tap into his stepdad's, not stepdad, his, I guess, what do you call that when you're foster father, I guess, or foster parent. Is always tapping into his resources. He has whatever he needs. Okay, years go by, and this same philanthropist, this kind-hearted man, finds out that there's a man in the community that's about to be released from jail. He's been in jail for like 20 years. He did like something small, but it was a harsh punishment. And he's coming out of jail. He has no family living. He has no place to go. And he feels bad for him, so he decides he's going to take this man into his home. His home is full. He has a barn with like an extra room back there. He He's going to give him that bedroom, and he'll give him whatever food he has left over at the end of the day, and he'll provide for him. And every single day, when this man goes out to the barn to bring him his food, this ex-convict is so happy, he's so elated, so grateful, and he's like on the floor throwing himself at this man, just being so, just all these accolades of gratefulness and happiness. And the boy doesn't understand what this guy's so happy about. He's living in a barn. He's eating yesterday's food. Like, why is he feeling excitement? Like, I would not be happy if I had those things, he said. So he goes over to this guy. He's trying to understand where he's coming from. Why is it that you feel all these emotions of gratitude and you're so elated? Well, I have everything and I don't feel anything. I have whatever I have. I'm living in the lap of luxury. I have the best food. I have the best caretaker, best vacation. You have nothing. You're living in an outhouse with yesterday's food. Why are you excited? Why are you happy? Right? This is the metaphor. Okay. So what is this metaphor really an expression of? Okay, you have to really think deeply about this to appreciate it. It's really an expression of each of us. You see, there is a child in you that expects the world to operate in a certain type of way. We expect that our legs will always work. We expect that our eyes will always see. We expect that our ears will always hear. We expect that the things that we have will be constant and it'll never change. However, there is another part of us, our soul, that recognizes that that's not the reality of the world that you and I live in. That every moment of life is a gift. That every moment of whatever it is that we have is a gift, and we take it for granted. And the higher parts of us recognize this and are able to kind of like ground ourselves in this world of just gratitude for every second that we have. Like right now, we should be feeling a sense of elation, of happiness. We should be expressing a level of gratitude for everything that we have, but we don't feel it because we naturally relate to the inner child in us that expects everything to be there. So yesterday's luxuries or today's necessities. We're bought into the idea that I'll continue having whatever I have, and it could only get better from here. And this is a mistake. You see, in this country, we often talk about the pursuit of happiness, right? But happiness is not something that you pursue. Happiness is something different because the Rachamim tell us that there's a mitzvah to be happy. As a matter of fact, in the Varim, Pesukim that say that you'll be punished if you're not happy. Well, then what is happiness? What am I supposed to accomplish? What am I supposed to look for in this thing called happiness? Because if you were to ask me when I was younger what happiness was going out with my friends on a Saturday night, going to the city, getting some drinks, meeting some people, shaking it up. Like that's what I thought happiness was. What was it for you? Nothing? No happiness?
Reading a book.
She's such a liar. She said reading a book. But anyway, we're happily married. We've been married for 25 years. And and I'll explain why we're happily married. Why is it that, when we think of happiness, we often think of the things that give us pleasure and not happiness, right? When we're thinking about happiness, we're all like, I just felt very happy eating some of that food over there, right? But that's not a real expression of happiness. That was me being satiated. That was me satiating my constant Sephardic need for meat, this endless pit of just like wanting to consume, and that was just, but that's certainly not happiness, right? I would say that one of the happiest days of my life was the day that I got married. One of the next happiest day of my life was having all my children. I didn't have my children. Watching my wife have all my children. Those are very happy moments of life. But there are plenty of moments in between that, are challenging. They're very challenging. Figuring out how to pay for everything, how to support my family, how to make sure that my wife is happy, how to make sure that my children are happy, make sure that they're successful, that they accomplish things. That's a lot of work over there. There's a famous book written by the Chazon Ish, which is a bunch of questions and answers. Chazon Ish was a rabbi that was the chief rabbi of Israel. It wasn't an official position, but more of like the religious community of Bnei Brak. And he had something called a book of She'elot and Shuvot, book of questions and answers. And typically, in this book, when he would, he was asked a question, he'd give a very lengthy answer with sources and so on and so forth. And there's one question in the whole book. There's something like 600 or 700 questions in his book. There's one question which is unique in that it's a Holocaust survivor who asked him about depression and happiness. And everyone's waiting to see this like very lengthy, long answer. And instead, what we see is a one-liner from the rabbi. He says that anyone who knows anything about life knows that there's no such thing as sadness in this world. Now, was he wrong? Was he lying? What's the rabbi saying? What's the lesson there? What does that even mean, that there's such a thing as sadness? Well, let's try to figure out what sadness is for a moment. And maybe we could take a step back and then try to zoom out a little bit and try to understand a little bit what happiness is, or maybe what happiness is not. Sadness is something that is very much related to a lack of direction, a lack of a connection. Okay? So let's do it like this. They're the first 5 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. You'll never forget this, okay? What's the first letter? And Aleph always represents 1. But not 1 in the sense that this is one phone. This is one of millions of phones, not billions of phones. This is not 1. This is not a true expression of 1. In Judaism, when we talk about 1, we're talking about the ultimate 1. And who's the ultimate 1? One is Hashem, right? And 1 is something that you and I cannot fully understand. We cannot understand something that is completely self-sufficient, alone, made of no other parts. It is alone, it's separate, which is why the next letter is the bet. And the bet is really a bracket to remind you that no matter how much you think you'll understand Aleph, you're not going to understand it. It's beyond our ability. But we do understand everything beyond, to the left of bet. Okay, we understand that everything is made up of multiple things. Multiplicity, bet is 2. All things in the world are made up of more than one things. Bet is also where we build our bite. It's where we build our home. And the question then is, well, what do you want to put inside of your bite? What do you want to put into your home? So the next letter is Gimel. So what is Gimel? Gimel always represents Gomel. Gomel Chasidim. Gemilut Chasidim. The Gomel, the Gimel, is always running after the next letter. What's the next letter? Dalet always represents Dal, which means poor. Why is a Dalet poor?
Judgment.
What's that?
It also represents judgment.
It also represents judgment. What's that?
Lacking the good.
Okay, it's true. Let's take a step back for a second.
But Dalit has one leg and it has a whole thing on top.
The Dalet is depressed because it's 2 intersecting lines that are going nowhere. And when you are an individual that does not have clarity as to where he or she ought to be going, that is where sadness begins from. Sadness is an expression of a lack of understanding of what you should be doing right now. You are the saddest when you are lacking clarity. You are the most unhappy when you don't have vision, which is why the next letter is the letter He. That's what you were saying before with the Yud, right? So the He is really a Daled with a Yud on the bottom. And what's happening is that the Yud is pulling you out of that corner. It's creating something called expansiveness. It's expanding the Daled into something much more profound. The He is an expression of this world, of the Olam, of the world that you and I are living in. And the only way you and I could live in a world of Simcha, right? Which, by the way, not an accident, has the same otiyot as the word, the number Chamesh, Chamisha, and Simcha are the same letters, right? Because 5 is the number of expansiveness. 5 is also the number of Simcha, of happiness, which is why I'd like to believe that Chamsa, 555, right, is really an expression of just be expansive, be expansive, be expansive. Don't worry about somebody else's ayin hara. If you're doing what number 5 wants you to do, you could never be controlled or influenced negatively by the outside forces. Okay, so let's explain what Simcha is. Simcha is the clarity of doing what you were meant to be doing. It's knowing that right now you're involved in everything that you were supposed to be doing. So for example, it's a true story. I shared this actually, I think on Thursday. my son was this is 2 years ago. It's a true story. He was learning in Israel, and my grandmother passed away during COVID, like right at the beginning of COVID. Not from COVID. She was an older lady. She was 93 years old. She passed away, and my family wanted to bury her in Israel, and nothing was open. So how do you send? Who's going to receive the body on the other side? No one could leave. The whole thing was so crazy and complicated. So I had this 19-year-old boy. I think it was 19. He was 18 or 19 years old, and I'm like, listen, Grandma passed away, and she's going to be coming to Israel. We're going to be burying her there. Is there any way you could just make sure, be there to make sure that everything is done, properly? I want her to have a proper burial, and so on and so forth. I'm like, maybe you should bring a couple of guys just in case you need a minyan. I don't know if you'll get a minyan even. There's no one out. Everything was closed. So he says, don't worry about it. Dad, I'll take care of it. Okay. So the body gets to Har HaMenuchot, which is where she was buried, and nothing is done. There's one guy there, okay, with a shovel. Nothing was dug up yet, okay, and he's relieved to see my son there because I don't know how he was going to do this whole thing on his own. And he's like, you're the grandson? He's like, good. He's like, I just need someone to ID the body. He's like, do you just want to ID your grandmother for her? And this is not something that a healthy kid wants to do. No one wants to see their grandmother like that. But because there was no one there from the family, he had no choice. He had to do it. Poor kid, right? And certainly, he could have complained, and he could have been, the whole thing. Nothing was ready. He had to help dig the grave, help bury her. The whole thing was like a non-stop, heavy thing for it would be heavy for me, it would be heavy for you, we would be unhappy. But if you were to ask him right now, what was it like going through all that? He would say that it was probably one of the most meaningful moments of his life. Because he was doing everything that he could be doing in that situation. And maybe that's what the Chazon Ish meant, that en atzivut ba'olam, that sadness is really an expression of me not having the clarity of knowing where I should be going. And the reason why I think there's so much of sadness in our society today, well, obviously excluding people that have mental health issues, that's a whole separate issue, that's a separate topic. But for most of us, healthy thinking people, the reason why we're sad is because we're thinking too much of ourselves. And we're not thinking about being the Gimel, running after the Dalet, to create a world of expansiveness. When you go to pay a Shiva call, the halacha is, when you walk in, you say nothing to the person you're sitting across from. The person that's sitting Shiva, you sit there and you wait for them to welcome you in. They're the Dalet, and you're the Yud. You're waiting for them to draw you in, creating an expansive moment to draw them out of their moment of sadness. They're doing what is right, you're doing what is right, and in that moment, you're literally bringing God into the world. You're created something called B'Tselem Elokim. Each of you are so awesome, you're amazing. But yet, when you allow the child in you to define your reality, it's never enough. It's just, you're never happy, you're never satiated. But when you allow yourselves to identify with the soul in you, the higher parts of your essence and your being, that is where you begin to feel something called happiness. So happiness is not going to the gym and looking in the mirror and seeing that now you've developed the physique of a gorilla and you have a nice six-pack. But happiness instead is knowing that you were committed to the process, and whatever the results are, they're not up to me, they're up to something else. But I know that I did what I was supposed to be doing. Simcha is knowing that you are making choices that are the best possible choices that were put out in front of you. And therefore, if you have a situation where you're stuck between choices, because ultimately it's choosing, right? How do I know what the right choice is? Okay, this is an easy litmus test. 90% of the time, think about these terms, ready? If you have an easy choice versus a difficult choice, 90% of the time, the difficult choice is the right choice. The easy choice doesn't allow you to always grow. The choices are always about growth versus non-growth. And there's a constant that I've seen. The constant is that God loves you more than you could possibly imagine. And therefore, He desperately wants you to grow. He wants you to make the best choices. So He creates something called life. You're put into this world. And for better or for worse, your parents were the only parents that could raise you. They were the only people that could guide you, to give you the perfect counterweight for you to express the best part of who you are. But you got to choose it. And if you don't choose it, sometimes God creates circumstances that force us to grow. And circumstances are always difficult than choice. Choice is the most meaningful thing in the world. As a matter of fact, I would even argue that the most meaningful relationships in your life are going to be the ones that you choose. Think about that for a minute. Did you choose your parents to be your parents? No. But when you start thinking of your parents as people, and you start choosing to respect and honor them, that changes the nature of that relationship. That's where meaning comes into that relationship. And until then, you're forced to be in that relationship. Hopefully the next relationship that you're going to choose is going to be the person that you marry. Right? That's going to be a meaningful, powerful thing. The most meaningful relationships are the ones that you choose. You could choose to have a relationship with God, but if you don't choose it, you're not making an effort to connect to it, to feel it. It's not going to be that meaningful. The more you choose to be in that relationship, the more meaningful that is. Now, that is the precursor to feeling an expression of something called simcha. The Mishnah in Perkei Avot says, Ezu hashir hasameach bechelko. And therefore, from the Mishnah's perspective, simcha is about being satisfied with what you have first. The true wealth is the satisfaction of knowing that you have what you need to be successful. So why do you think so many people are so unhappy today? What is it that is holding people back from expressing this aspect of, human free choice, the ability to express the best of us? What's holding you back? We say, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. What does that really mean? Does that mean that every day, now going up until, until Purim, I should be drinking more and more and more, so I can feel a sense of, elated happiness? Or is it something else? What are the mitzvot on Purim? What am I supposed to do? There's three specific mitzvot of Purim. Anyone know what they are? Mishlach Manot. Yeah, very good. And? Oh, that's right, it's fourth. Megillah, sorry, thank you. Megillah and Seudah, she's right. She's just whispering is fourth. I'm trying to make mistakes, and I know she likes to correct me, and I know that it makes her happy when she corrects me. So I'm going to purposely make mistakes so that she can go ahead and feel happy. So okay, fine. What do all those mitzvot have in common? Right? What's that? The mitzvot have one theme in common. They're supposed to force you to get out of your comfort zone to connect with the people around you. Okay? Going to Megillah, you got to do that with people. You got to go Seudah with people, generally family. It's sometimes really hard to always be there with family, especially when you're with your family. Then there's a Mishalach Manot. You got to go ahead and give Mishalach Manot. You got to give these special baskets of food to the people that you're having the most difficult time connecting to. And then you have something called Matalat Yonim, finding the poor people in your neighborhood that desperately need it. Why is that what we're doing on Purim? Why is this the mitzvah? Purim always comes down the last month of the Jewish calendar, right? It's the month of Adar is number 12, the 12th month of the Jewish calendar, which is the prep for the month of Nisan, the first of the Jewish calendar. What do we celebrate in the month of Nisan? We celebrate something called Pesach. What are we remembering or celebrating? Which is the celebration of our freedom as a people, right? You can't feel happiness or be free if you're depressed, because freedom is really something in the mind. It starts in your head. You could be the freest person and be imprisoned by your mind. I have nothing when you have everything. I'm so unhappy, and you have so reasons to be happy for. You have so many things to be grateful for. Right? It's in your head. Your mind determines your emotional state, not your emotions. Stop allowing the way you feel to define your reality, and start asking yourselves, do I want to choose to be happy right now? What am I doing to work on being besimcha? Because it's a mitzvah to be besimcha every single moment. As a matter of fact, we're saying that it's possible for all of you to have a true expression of happiness every moment of your life, every day, every second. It can be a moment of simcha. And it starts with answering this one question. Well, what does it mean to be the best version of yourselves? What does the best you look like right now? What does it look like? Who are you meant to be? Because when you're making choices daily that remove you, that hold you back from expressing that excellent, best, most beautiful part of yourself, that's where your unhappiness, that is where your dalid is expressing itself from. How can you become more expansive? So there's two ways of doing it. One is stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the people's needs around you. That's called Gemilut Chasadim. And the other way of doing it is called Limud HaTorah, right? Is studying, developing yourself, having a clear understanding of what your spiritual role and path is in this world. You pick and choose which one works best for you. Not everyone is a Talmud Torah person. Not everyone can sit and learn. That's fine. I get that. But no one in this room can tell me that, I really don't know how to be kind to other people. You have other problems if you know how to answer that question. Right? I tell my irreligious family, you know what? God will forgive you for not keeping the Torah, but He won't forgive you for being a jerk. That's on you. Because it's common sense to be nice. Common sense to be grateful. Common sense to be thoughtful and to be, just to express gratitude. That's just common sense. That's not something I have to explain, right? I'm not sure if you know this, but March 20th is officially International Happiness Day, right? And I think yesterday was officially the Day of Hate. Was it Shabbat? So this is you have these two different ideas expressing itself, all in the same month, in the month of Adar. And I just think it's interesting that God poses these two extremely opposite concepts. The world feels that the month of in March, which is generally where Adar comes out in, is the time where we're supposed to be thinking about Simcha. And then you have a hate group that just moved down to what are they? What's that? Goyim.com. Goyim.com decided that they want to go ahead and they want to heckle Jews in Miami, and they were standing outside of the Chabad house and they were making inappropriate anti-Semitic neo-Nazi statements, singing Heil Hitler and whatnot. And it's kind of it's depressing thinking about it, but it's not depressing when you think of it in the context of the month that all this is happening in. Right? They chose the first Shabbat in Adar as the month to express hate. Right? By the way, it's the same month that Haman HaRasha chose to be this horrific day for Jews. Most people mistakenly believe that the reason why we get dressed up on Purim is because, the Jews were expressing God's hidden face, but there's really another reason why we get dressed up on Purim. Does anyone know? The reason why we get dressed on Purim, according to some, is, yeah?
Because Hashem's name doesn't come up in
Right, that's the first expression of why, right? Because God is hidden and therefore we want to kind of hide ourselves. But really, there were a group of non-Jews. Did you know this? Right, you had Jews, they were Goyim in Persia that were so afraid of Jewish retribution because Esther was the queen, and they were afraid that they were going to get punished, so they started dressing up. The Goyim were dressing up as Jews. The opposite. Mamash, the opposite. The Goyim were afraid that there's going to be a counterattack, so the Goyim started dressing up as Jews. They started dressing up in Jewish clothing as a way of kind of, we're okay, we're cool, we're Jews, don't touch us, we're good. And by the way, I'm confident that when Goyish.com, recognizes their greatest fear that we truly do control the world, right?
Is that actually a website?
I think so, yeah. Whatever, it's something like that. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's something like that. They're they're literally white supremacists, neo-Nazis, who believe that Jews control the world, and especially this country, and they want us out of here, and so on and so forth. Now, I want to say something that's not so. I guess it's not a happy thought. What's that? Oh no, we could keep it on. It's okay. I want them to hear it. If you think this is bad now, right? This is nothing. Just wait for another 2 to 3 years when AI knocks out 30 to 40% of all the jobs in this country. Mm-hmm. And when the Goyish Defense League has the opportunity to go ahead and keep spreading this propaganda, what do you think is going to happen here? Right? Now, I'm sharing this not because I'm trying to frighten you. Well, maybe a little bit I am. But I'm trying to motivate you to use this time wisely. I like to think of it in terms like this. what was it like living in Jerusalem the week before the temple was destroyed, or 6 months before it was destroyed? Right? How much did everyone take for granted of all that time that led up to it? How much of us, by the way, over COVID, were planning to learn an instrument and just never have found the time to do it? Right? Or we're going to do new things that just didn't happen. Like we kept like, oh, whatever, that's 2 years later, 3 years later already, right? And here we are. You made it. All that worry got you nowhere. Right? To be besimcha means taking advantage of every single moment of life. Because I don't know, I'm not worrying about the guy tomorrow who's going to do whatever he's going to do. I don't care about the Goyish defense league, right? I care about right here, right now. What am I going to do today to live a life of simcha, of happiness? There were Jews in the concentration camps that were marching to their deaths singing besimcha. How does that happen? How could you be besimcha in that situation? And it comes from a very deep, profound understanding that we believe that God loves you more than you can imagine. That there's no such thing as bad in the world. It's just how you and I interpret our reality. But ultimately everything is good. And the test, our Rachamim say, before Mashiach comes, is going to be a generation that has something called Pnei HaKelev, right? Has something called the face of the dog. Now what does that mean? What does it mean to be a generation with the face of the dog? So I'll tell you what I think it means. When a dog is hit with a stick, what does it do? It starts barking at the stick, right? It sees the stick as a source of its pain, right? And it doesn't realize there's something else behind it that's causing it, the person with the stick. That's our generation. We think that the Goyish Defense League is the problem, and it's not. Someone else is holding the stick. And what does that person want from you? Wants you to be great. He wants you to express the best of who you are. He wants you to live a life of meaning and happiness, because sadness is an illusion that you create for yourself. Of course, there are moments where we're unhappy, where we lose someone, and it's hard. I'm not saying hardships don't exist. I'm saying there's a mindset that we could all have that allow us to lean into those challenges in life and walk away, not besimcha, but at the very least, having an understanding that I did everything I could possibly do in that situation. There's nothing more that I can do. Because I'm not in control of the results. I'm only in control of my actions. So the month of Adar is a story about a guy named Mordechai who chose to express his Jewishness outwardly, did not want to bow to Haman. And there's lots of questions, like, why did he do that? What was his problem? Like, why did he just submit? Like, why create an issue? Mordechai wanted to challenge all the Jews, saying, like, you guys, we're in Galut. This is your story, my friends. This is Great Neck's story. The story of Great Neck is the story of Purim. You guys come from the hardest party people on the planet. Persians are known. I've been to their weddings. I've tried drinking with them. I can't keep up. Right? Now, it's in your blood. You can't escape it. Right? This is part of Shushan. It goes all the way back to 2,000 years ago. Right? More, 2,400 years ago. Right? Your ancestors were in Shushan with Mordechai. Right? Your ancestors were the first group of Jews to go through exile, go through living in the land of Israel for 1,000 years, and now have to deal with being in a foreign land. And you know what most Jews in Shushan did? They gave up. They put their kippot away, they put their tefillin away, they gave up. Let's just assimilate. It's over. And what happens at the end of the story is that this group of people, your ancestors, had a greater revelation of God than any generation that came before them. We say that the Jews of Shushan had a clear appreciation of godliness than the Jews at Har Sinai. Because at Har Sinai, they were forced to believe in God. The light show, you can't deny it. With all the miracles that happened, there's no way, there's no free will there. But in Shushan, the Purim story was the first time where the people could choose to see how God was intimately involved in their lives, and they all chose to connect to God. They chose to maintain their Judaism. That's why you're here. You're here because you are part of the descent. You're a descendant of someone that lived in Shushan 2,500 years ago, who made the choice to say, I'm staying in, I'm connected. If you didn't make that choice, you wouldn't be here right now. You'd be gone. Like so many other Jews were gone. So, what is simcha? Do you want anything? Do you agree with what I'm saying?
I think you're doing a really great job.
Really? Wow. Okay. Well, what would you say is the greatest stumbling block for a person to express, simcha in a way that's meaningful?
No, I think you did a really great job explaining. I really do think that having a sense of purpose and direction is really what gives a person the ability to find happiness. I don't like using that word as a translation for simcha. I think it's a little bit of it doesn't capture it as accurately. I think it's more about feeling like a person has meaning and purpose. When a person feels that their life is purposeful and meaningful, that's when they feel that sense of simcha that I think you're trying to capture so beautifully. So I think that's exactly what's being said here. And this idea of simcha, which has the same, this simcha has the same letters as the word machshava, a person's thoughts, right? It's something that our mind, right, if we have that focus, if we have that person, we think we're just looking for a feeling, as my husband said so beautifully, but that feeling is something that we can, we'll be searching for it constantly, and we probably will unlikely to be satisfied, because once we capture that feeling, then the next day it fades, and then we're looking for something else. But if you find sense, meaning, and that's why I think that statement, which was so beautiful that you mentioned of the Chazon Ish, there's no sadness in this world when you realize that even those very painful and challenging moments have meaning and purpose. That's why there's no sadness that's experienced, right? You can only use your mind, right? The machshava, the thought process, the mind, to make sense, and not that we actually understand it. We don't have the capacity to understand God's plan, but we can know that there's purpose and there's meaning in those challenging moments.
I agree.
Great.
High five. Okay, does anyone have any questions about anything we said just up until now? No questions. All of your questions are answered. Wow. So everyone's going to walk out tonight feeling the simcha?
Yes, great. We have questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Not really about what you're saying, but
Oh, yeah.
what's that book by the Chazon Ish called?
Oh, it's called the Shailot V'Tshuvot of the Chazon Ish.
Can you say it again?
Shailot V'Tshuvot, it's in Hebrew, it's no English version of it.
Oh,
Questions and answers of the Chazon Ish.
thank you.
Yeah.
You didn't really explain how we're supposed to know what to find meaningful or purposeful. Like, how do we know what that is?
Okay, good question. Okay, so the question was, how do we find meaning and purpose in our lives? So, the way in which I find, how do I do it? I do it by first having a clear vision in my mind's eye of what it means to be the best version of me. And then I ask myself, well, what do I need to do to become that better version of myself? If you believe that you're currently expressing the best version of yourself, you're making a mistake. It's impossible. You're living in La La Land. There's no one here that's able to express the best of themselves. We can never achieve the best of ourselves. It's something we're striving for. It's a very high, it's like shoot for the moon. We never really get there. We want to get somewhere in between, right? So you have to have a very broad vision, an expansive vision of what it means to be the best you. And then you need to have a plan that allows you to help you attain that vision. And every single day is you trying to, the choice that you're making are helping you get closer and closer to express that vision of you. That's how you find the meaning. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Someone else had a question? Yasmin.
your happy marriage.
About my happy marriage?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I want to hear.
This is on camera, by
yeah,
the way.
what? The question is, they wanted to hear,
Maybe articulate the question better.
Okay, now do you want me to
No, I don't know, what is that, like, what do you exactly?
You just referenced that part of the itinerary was that you were gonna speak about why you have a happy marriage.
why do we have a happy marriage? Yeah. Well, she wants to know why we have a happy marriage.
I want,
No, I'm just joking around, I'm just joking around.
I want Nalini to answer.
I want Nalini to answer it too.
I know.
What does Nalini say?
I mean, I have lots of things to say about that. I think that not having an expectation that, things have to always be happy. I think we're using this word in many different contexts, but I think really being committed to a sense of purpose, which is really, that can be broadened in any part of our life, but certainly in a marriage, committed to the goal of unity, of wanting to be one team, and it's not always easy. I'm assuming not everybody here is married, but I'm assuming everybody here has friends. And when you have a friendship, so I don't know, maybe until you travel together, you don't realize that your friendship can be tested. But right, we don't always. Someone travels together. We don't always, see eye to eye. We don't always agree. We have curveballs that are thrown at us, and that doesn't mean that, okay, we're.
So what centers you? Because marriage is a lot of curveballs, a lot of challenges, kids, health, and that's not. What centers you at those times when things are really coming against you in a tough way? What holds you together in your joint mission?
Right. I think it's that sense of purpose, meaning why am I here? Am I here only to feel pleasure? Well, then as soon as it's hard, okay, I'm out. Right? So when you have that sense of unity and purpose of whatever that may, it could be, there's a general purpose from a Torah perspective of unity, of bringing God's presence into the world through this paradigm, through this relationship. Or it could be for somebody else, maybe it's, I don't know, some other sense of commitment and unity, of purpose. But I think again, it comes down to feeling that you're going somewhere, you're trying to achieve something. I think that's what does it for me. I mean, maybe my husband just wants meat every night, and that's the sense of purpose.
Yes.
No, that's probably not a sense of purpose. No, I really believe that it's through the suffering of marriage. You're not joking, but I would say that, to answer your question, I would say that the first step to a happy marriage is the commitment to the marriage, and I think that's really hard because we want. I'll take it in a second. I saw your hand. We want everything to be perfect, and it's really hard to be committed to something that we are feeling angered or frustrated by that other person. And I think that the first step to being in a healthy relationship is knowing that you have a partner that's going to be committed to you through the hardships of that relationship. Because there's no relationship that's not going to go through hardships. There's no relation where you're not going to fight. There's no relation where you're not going to go through like a disagreement. But the question is, how are you dealing with those disagreements? Do you have someone who's always just unwilling to hear the other side, or you have someone who's working with you to try to create a healthier, happier understanding of both wants and needs and expectations in that relationship? And I would say that I think that's something both of us have. We have this very deep desire to commit to one another. And I think that commitment is the secret sauce ingredient that allows you to experience a happy, healthy marriage. Even when we're fighting, we're committed to the fighting. We're committed to the process of trying to uncover what the issue is, so we can get to a place of.
We're committed to the relationship. Meaning that's really what we're committed to. No, because you have to think what's my long-term goal, right? There's the long-term versus the short-term. So it's not, it might feel good to win an argument, but if you didn't win the relationship, right, then you didn't win.
But winning the arguments feels good, right? Anyway, yeah, let me hear. What's your question?
Yeah, how do you resolve an unhappy situation?
Drugs and alcohol? No. I'm just joking. No. How do I? Well, an unhappy situation is generally a moment of frustration. In the context of a marriage, it's the only way to resolve it is by having a conversation and working it through with the person. You know?
And also being okay with being unhappy sometimes.
I'm not okay with being unhappy.
Meaning, why is there, I find it so fascinating, like why do we think we always have to, it's okay to feel sadness, it's okay to feel frustration, it's okay to feel stress. Why is there an expectation that meaning I think part of the word simcha is actually knowing that there's purpose in my frustration right now. Let me find what that purpose is. That's why I'd rather use the word purpose and meaning as opposed to happy. I don't have to ignore my other emotions. They exist. I'm annoyed when you don't put your socks in the hamper. I'm annoyed when, whatever. It's okay to feel those things. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm okay when I come home and there's no. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Simcha. The question is, do I think simcha is a choice? I think it is a choice. Otherwise you couldn't command simcha. Yeah, so it's a choice.
So what about all those other emotions? Do you think, I don't want to say ignore them.
Right.
No, so that's why her definition.
That's exactly
her definition.
what I'm
That's her
saying.
point. She's answering your question.
I think that's why it's important to say. I mean, it can simcha can coexist with other emotions if you understand that there's meaning and purpose in that emotion or whatever, in that experience.
And letting those emotions control you.
Correct. It doesn't mean, I feel frustration and I'm going to lash out at somebody. I'm not saying that doesn't happen sometimes, but it's okay. You can see the socks on the floor and think, okay, Hashem wants me to. It's an easy thing to pick on. Okay, Hashem wants me to resist the temptation to lash out at the sock dropper. Right? And there's meaning and purpose in this frustration. How can I overcome this? Yeah.
It's not related to your marriage, just a general question. So let's say you have unhappy times. How do you get out of that funk?
So the way I get myself out of my unhappy times is, number one, is I'm okay being unhappy. I'm okay being in a state of being a little unhappy. I don't want to stay in a place of unhappiness. I try to identify what the issue is, right? And then I try to resolve it. So I don't believe in using I'm not, again, unless someone is. The answers are all for people that don't have mental health issues. Okay. I don't believe in using medication unless you need it. Obviously, that therefore, if you are someone that has bipolar or manic depression or anything like that, then definitely use whatever your doctor tells you to use. But if you don't have any of that, and you're sitting there and you're thinking about, how do I fix this state that I'm in, using alcohol or drugs or something like that is a mistake. But never.
There's something you do, I know, because I've seen you in a stress circumstance, which I do as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's very, very important. When I'm down and irritated and angry and not happy, I talk to people. And I do the same thing. Some people go into themselves, which is never a good thing, is to share it and get a perspective. And everyone needs one person that they can tell the absolute emet to, and they know you and they don't judge you, and it's going to hear you, give you a fair perspective, but you just tell them, I have one person I call up, and I'll tell him, and he will not judge me. I can tell him anything. He knows everything, all the sort of details, of challenges which, we go through in life, and family, friends, and all the rest of it. Everyone needs one such person who can
100%.
unload.
Yeah,
on.
everyone needs a mentor, someone they could speak to, a friend, someone they could go ahead and confide in. That's so important. This is why, by the way, the cornerstone of the month of Adar is for you to build relationships with people. Right? Shalach Manot, the Yavanim, the Su'udah, all of that is about getting you to get into a place where you have people. You cannot be b'simcha if you're alone. You need to have a team of people that are working with you. So definitely being able to confide in someone, friend, mentor, whatever it is definitely the key. But I would say that's identifying the issue, expressing the issue is 90% of solving the problem. Yeah.
The month of Adar is happiness. Why do we say Tachno?
There are some that say that we should. The question is, why do we say Tachnun in the month of Adar?
All right, there's no halal as well.
There's no halal also. This is true also. There were some sources that argue that we should not say Tachnun in the month of Adar.
On Nisan we don't say the whole month.
Correct. It's because yeah.
Nisan, Pesach story was that Pesach was a redemption. This is not redemption, survival. We survived. In the end, after Shresh was in charge, Esther was still married. It wasn't a full redemption. We were still in Galut. Well, we got to go back, and most did not go back. So there's not the full power of joy, really, that comes with the Pesach. It was a full Geulah, all of Klal Yisrael. That's really the difference. While we do on Nisan, not on Adar.
Yeah.
Two questions. One, the rabbi, how do you know when you're a young man, how do you know when you're ready to get married?
How did I know? When I was ready to start dating or to get married?
You're trying to think I'd be happier over you're not helping.
I knew that I was ready to start dating when I knew that I was ready to be in a relationship where I'm willing to give unconditionally and to be a father. Right? Those two things had to be there for me. And when I knew I was willing to take on the responsibility of being a dad and a husband, that's when I knew I was ready to start dating. And as far as me knowing that I wanted to marry this woman,
I don't think he asked that.
is that what you asked both questions? Did you ask that? What was your second question?
So that,
Question is a completely separate question. How do you avoid, like, the main thing that I think bothers me personally and other people, I guess, is like in college, you're always like thinking about 5 semesters down or how much money I'm going to make 5 years from now. How do you avoid not getting into the mentality of thinking about the future so much? And all I think about is how much money I'm going to make 10 years from now, 15 years from now.
I'm not sure what your question is.
Yeah,
No, why don't we say it again? I want to hear you say it again. Can you just repeat your question one more time?
I think it causes people to get happy, and me personally, from my experience, that I'm constantly not thinking about what I have now, what's in front of me now, and what's on my plate to even accomplish now.
Right.
I'm more thinking about how me accomplishing this is just like a small little tiny step to like people.
I want my husband to answer, but I just want to comment that I think that quality is already a very, the kernel of it is actually very healthy and good because it shows that you have drive. And the one thing that I know many women are looking for is drive. That a person, certainly a man, should have drive to accomplish and to do, so that's a good thing.
What just happened? Yeah, and that's a good quality to have. Yeah, I'm going to address it. I'll take it in a second. Just number one is that I think that like my wife said so eloquently and beautifully that there is a shortage of men now. There's a deep need. There's nothing wrong with wanting more. But there's something
having ambition.
There's nothing wrong with wanting more. There's something wrong with being unable to appreciate what you have. And this is true, by the way, for most traits. Most of us have a set of midot traits that we inherit, and we just rely on them. We take them for granted. Sometimes we're put in situations where we're lacking a particular midah, and our avodah, our challenge, our work is to be mindful of the lacking, the shortcoming in our midah, and then to work on it. So the question is then, well, what can you do to work on being more grateful for the things that you have right now? So it doesn't come naturally to you, and therefore part of your work right now is to figure out how to feel more gratitude. The first step of feeling a sense of gratitude is about feeling humble. Is about humbling yourself a little bit It's about feeling a sense of appreciation. And that means that emotion is not going to come to you unless you work on feeling it. This is what Musar is trying to accomplish. Musar isn't just the work of, reminding you about how bad you are and all the things that you're doing or not doing. It's a systematic approach on recognizing the shortcomings in our character and then coming with a path to sensitize ourselves to those traits so that we can become more balanced, because none of us are balanced. God creates us in an unbalanced state so that we can choose to become balanced. This way, that choice is meaningful. My choice, every moment becomes meaningful. So yes, you can work on becoming more mindful, grateful for the things that you have. That's a choice, especially if you're aware of it. You're already 90% there.
I just want to add, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So we say in Birkos HaShachar, in the morning blessings, so we say the bracha of She'asali Kol Tzorki, that Hashem created us. Well, how would we define that? We thank Hashem for, does anyone, She'asali, that He made me. Kol Tzorki, how would we define that? Everything I need. So thank you, Hashem, for providing me with all of my needs. Now, all of my needs can be understood in two ways. Hashem, you created me with all of the things that I need. You gave me all the things that I'm longing for, all of my needs. I'm longing to find my zivug. I'm longing to make more money. I'm longing to, buy this item, whatever it may be, right? But Hashem, you also created me. You gave me everything that I need. It's the same bracha that has a dual meaning. And I think this also is the dichotomy and the complexity of life, right? Yes, there are the things that we feel that are missing, that I would like to fulfill in my life, and Hashem, you gave me those things that I'm lacking, and I know that in this moment, you gave me every single thing that I need. All of my needs are taken care of. The things that are missing are exactly the things that I need right now. Right? There's that, and that's part of the beauty of the complexity of life.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Usually most relationships kind of suffer in the beginning. What would you say was some of the things challenges that you went through in the beginning of your marriage, and how did you get through?
I don't think all marriages suffer in the beginning.
Yeah. No, I said generally.
Oh,
Generally, it's true. We say kol haschalot kashot. All
right.
beginnings are hard. It's a huge transition. Yeah. Come on, tell them the story.
Now listen to Nalini.
Okay. No, I'll tell that story. I'll tell the story. I was.
First time you dropped the sock?
No. I never stopped dropping the socks. That's why we're still talking about it. My wife went to Barnard, and she had a friend from Barnard who was visiting us. This is we're married for like a couple of months. And what's that?
I'm not sure which story.
Oh.
Tell us the story too.
Okay, I don't remember the kind. Go ahead.
Cleaning?
Yeah. Okay, I don't remember the kind. Go. It's very good.
I don't want to get in trouble though. I can't believe you shared that story. Fine. Anyway, I think this is the story that you're referring to. I came home. This is a Friday, and her friend was visiting us, and she said something like, "Do you mind cleaning the toilet?" And I said, "This one."
Okay, yeah,
I
that's
think
great.
so. And I said, no, I don't think I should clean the toilet. I think you should clean the toilet. And she said,
I think it was like it's a woman's job.
I said, no, I'm get that. And she said, well, why not? I said, because I think you'll do a better job at it than. No, I may have said it's a woman's job. But what I meant to say was that you'll do a much better job at it than I would, because I've never done it before. Right, and I was I wasn't willing to concede in any way, and then we ended up. She ended up calling my rabbi on me. Can you explain to him why he has to clean the toilet? And I realized that I was being insensitive, but I wasn't trying to be insensitive. Honestly, that was just my myopic way of looking at the world. And I think that the challenge of marriage is recognizing that there's another perspective that's not your own, but is your own. And that's where the frustration comes from. Yeah.
Hey, when you went through that experience,
Yeah.
did you realize that this is the one,
This is the one. We were married already. What do you mean?
Oh, you were married already?
We were married already. Yeah.
We were stuck already. We
You
were
asking
committed.
me about before marriage?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, no, we
In
were married
general,
already.
I just think it's okay. The transitions are hard. You know, any transition is hard.
I think he's
Even
talking about dating.
right? What?
I think he's talking about when you're
Oh, that's
dating.
when you're dating and what?
There's like a challenge.
Oh, so yeah, there's lots of challenges when you're dating, and I think that there's the challenge, the greatest challenge of dating is protecting your ego, right? Because no one wants to be in a scenario where you're opening yourself up to someone who's going to reject you, and I think that's really hard. You got to be really secure in who you are, but part of the dating process is the potential of getting hurt, and you'll never truly be able to commit to someone else unless you're willing to get hurt. And therefore, if you're too busy protecting your own ego, you'll never be able to truly, you're never allowing this other person to truly experience who you are. So before you open yourself up, you have to have certain things that are in place. Like you want to make sure this person shares, your core values, that you can trust this person, that they're good, that you can have fun with them, that you really are willing to invest in this relationship. And if you are, if everything is truly there, you're attracted, you're having a good time, and this and that, then you just got to be committed to the process, which means being vulnerable enough to get hurt. And I find that, unfortunately, many people are so afraid of getting hurt, there's such an avoidance of that pain, that we don't allow ourselves to open ourselves up to the potential of somebody else. And that's the cause of most of the breakups in these relationships that should be so awesome, but they don't really create the space for that potential to get hurt. When you're committed to the process, you'll see it through, you'll go through the pain, but the two of you will work it through, and that's the process of actually building that relationship to that next level. Yeah.
How do you overcome the feeling of regret? Like, should have, could have, would have.
Can I answer that?
I can't see who asked that question.
Sorry, it's testing my.
There's a pillar. That's
Repeat the
okay.
question
Sorry.
too,
That's a
question is-
great question. The question was, how do you overcome the feeling of regret? Is that?
Yeah.
So, I find myself, I've been saying this phrase very frequently, when you made it, you look back on a choice that you made and yeah, you feel like if I could find myself in that situation again, I would make a different choice. So I think it helps to look back and say to oneself, well, I made the best possible choice given the information, tools, and resources that I had at that time, right? And we know that we're going to make choices that they're not always maybe the best choice given the information that I have now, but at the time, right, I know I made the best possible choice. And even if I didn't, even if, even in that moment, if you look back and you're like, but I knew that wasn't a good choice, then okay. So now that one has to say to themselves, okay, that wasn't the best choice. I'm not perfect. Only God's perfect. God doesn't expect me to be perfect. I'm going to make some poor choices. Now what's the next best choice I can make in the situation I'm in now, right? Because sitting in it is not going to help anybody, right? So we say that there's no, even though we talk about Jewish guilt, there's actually no word in Lashon HaKodesh in biblical Hebrew that means guilt. There is regret, right? There is regret. We say charata is regret, and you could regret something. I would not make that choice again, right? But I don't sit in it, right? Let go. I made the best possible choice given the information, tools, and resources I had at that time. Now what's the next best choice I can make where I am now?
There's also no word for fun in Hebrew. in biblical Hebrew. No, even modern Hebrew, it's not Hebrew.
Right.
Kef is Arabic.
Kev is Arabic.
Oh,
Kef is Arabic.
really?
Yeah.
Wow, I
Kef
didn't
is
know
Arabic. And when Jews actually in Hebrew, to modern Hebrew, we talk about having a good time, you know what we say? La'asot chaim. Let's go have some life. That's how we talk about having fun. But we don't relate to fun in the same way that the Americans do. Okay, last question.
Thank you.
Yes.
What happens when you're having trouble, like, understanding the meaning behind, like, the sadness that you're feeling?
Good question.
Understanding the meaning behind whatever situation you're being faced with,
Yeah.
that's a challenging situation. Right, so, and this actually goes back to Lauren's question also, that I just another comment I wanted to say is, I do think it's really important to acknowledge the negative emotion, right? What if I'm calling it negative, what the sadness, the frustration, the pain, whatever it is that one's experiencing. I think that's an important step. And then when you're trying to make sense of it, speaking to either, first of all, sometimes we don't always have to know, right? Sometimes we just can't make sense of it. It doesn't make sense. But emunah means not just that I believe that there's a God, but I believe that there's a God that He's good, which means whatever He's doing is good objectively in His reality, which is the only reality. But from my perspective, this can be extremely painful. This can be extremely challenging. This could be something that I don't know, I cannot make sense of. So acknowledging that is also okay. I cannot make sense of this. I had a friend, I can share too many stories, but I'll just share one very short one. A very close friend of mine, she was going through a lot with her family, and her daughter had a brain tumor. Thank God it was benign, but she had to go through surgery and recovery, and it was very, very challenging to deal with the medical issues of her daughter and challenges with another child in school. And she ended up she decided she was going to move back. She was living away from family. She decided she was going to move back and live with family, close to her parents, so that her parents could be more supportive, like hands-on. They were supportive emotionally, but to be hands-on. And she moved, they bought a house, everything went wrong with the house. It became like a financial disaster for them. And they were living in very tight quarters with her parents. This house was supposed to have been built or redone, whatever they were doing to it. They were stuck, they were living there. And, there's inevitably, you have 4 young kids. There's, living with your older parents. There's going to be, it's months and months, and you don't know how you're getting out of this. And in the middle of all of this, while she's living with her parents, her mother was suddenly hit by a car right outside their house. Okay, she didn't know. She was inside her parents' house, and they heard a crash. She sent her husband out. Her husband's a doctor. She said, "Judah, go see what went on outside. Maybe you can help." And he discovered his mother-in-law. Right, her mother was hit in a coma. A couple days later. Who could make sense of such a thing? Makes no sense. We can't make sense of things like this. But it helps to, I think, acknowledge the confusion, the pain, the challenge that's being experienced. And it takes a village. We need our friends, we need our community, we need rabbis and mentors, and we need support. Right? And I think, seeking that out is critical. And, I always end up, I can't speak without ever quoting my teacher and my mentor, Aliza. She says, the path to wholeness is through the broken. Right? You can't go around it even. You can't okay, this, like a broken glass over here, I'll just walk around it. No, you have to actually go through it. And as painful and as challenging as that may be, right? We have to realize it could take years or it might never happen, but even just that of putting oneself through that process, trying to walk through it, right, is the way we become whole and hopefully stronger, right? To find meaning, going back to that simcha, seeing that, this painful process can actually make me more whole than I was even previously.
We have one last question. Two last questions.
Oh
yeah.
boy.
Can I ask two questions?
It depends. Let's see.
All right, the first question is, you mentioned something earlier about having this broad vision of who you want to be in order to achieve happiness.
Mhm.
But what if someone is sort of unclear of where to begin that vision from?
Good.
And then the second question, if it's okay, is how do you stay happy with everything that you've accomplished, but at the same time you're a little bit unhappy because you're not accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish? You're sort of in this struggle, like, yes, I've done such great things, but I want to do so many greater things, and I'm not getting there, and so that level of happiness starts to sort of decrease, and you start getting, becoming worrisome of,
Right.
am I going in the right direction and whatnot?
So the first part of the question is, I think that how do you clarify the vision is, or how do you stay true to the vision is, if you can't figure it out on your own, find a mentor and go through with them, like clarify it. And the truth is that I would say that the process of answering the question is part of the journey and growth. From my perspective, the way I understand it is that, that's why I use that term, like to be a he, moving from a dollar to a he is about being expansive. And as long as you're in the process of expanding yourself, of searching for the answer, of trying, pushing, growing, not staying stagnant, you're already succeeding. So if you're asking the question and you're looking for the answer, you're already more than halfway to accomplishing what you need to accomplish. And it doesn't matter if it takes you a year to figure out the question, the answer to the question. The process of searching for the answer is part of the process of being expansive. And as far as the last part of the question, being, b'samech b'chalko, being happy with what you have, is really just an exercise in appreciation, right? It's recognizing the good. It's recognizing that there's a process. It's recognizing that everything meaningful takes time, and that there are going to be months where you're unproductive, and there are going to be months where you're super productive. There are going to be years where you're unproductive relative to other years, and they come in waves. And just like trees have seasons, people have seasons, and that's okay. It's okay sometimes to take a break and just chill, and just take time off. And even if you're feeling unproductive, sometimes we need that space to just let go, and then knowing that I'm letting go so that I could find. I forget, there's a famous CEO. I forget which company he's in. He's in one of the Fortune 500s. He takes 6 months vacation every year. He takes off 6 months and he works for 6 months. And the whole purpose of his 6-month vacation, it sounds fun, right? I think I'd go crazy for 6 months on vacation. But he uses his 6 months vacation, he's not completely off grid. He uses that time to learn new things, and develop himself, and so on and so forth. And he comes back and becomes a better, greater human being for that. And he's able to arrange that for himself. And I think that's awesome. We need to create spaces of downtime for ourselves so that we can refuel ourselves and get ready to grow. So the idea of you feeling this sense of lack of happiness or success when you are, that's coming from the evil inclination in you that you need to push away. And you need to work towards, recognizing that it's okay to be in low gear, and you'll shift when you're able to later. Yeah.
So, are either of you guys supposed to Shuvah? Or are you guys both raised?
No, we both
You were
are.
born perfect.
So, my question is, when you're kind of on your path,
Yeah.
how do you get over the idea of when you're trying to take something on or make a big decision in life and say that maybe this is not for me, but deep down it's the truth, and how do you juggle that what you think you want and what you really need, and how does that realization kind of come to mind where you take that step to get closer?
Can you?
For me, what you went?
No, I would love for. I know you articulated it very nicely, but I could you be a little more specific without I don't want you to
If
overshare.
somebody's juggling a decision or whether it's to take something on or anything, or when it comes to becoming more religious and just getting closer to Hashem.
Okay.
You've been so used to living like your past life, and had like some people may get overwhelmed with the idea of it without even taking that step, and they say to themselves like they completely deter themselves from it without even tasting it. So how does one like get out of that mental block?
The way you get out of the block is through drugs and alcohol. The way you get out of that mental block is you're expressing what I would call the classical heart-head dilemma, right? You know something to be true intellectually, but in your heart you don't feel it, or you're not ready, you're scared of it, or you're afraid of it, whatever it is, right? So whenever I had a heart-head dilemma, I always knew that my heart was wrong and that my head was right. And therefore, if I was unwilling to commit to it, whatever that new thing was, I knew it was a hard thing, and that I needed more time to convince my heart of what my head knew. And I never allowed myself to like say, well, it's either this or that, and it's all one thing. And therefore, generally speaking, I find that when you have a heart-head dilemma, it's generally because you don't know enough about the heart knows that you need to know more. Your mind does not know enough to make that commitment. Because if it was super clear what you're trying to commit to, your heart would be all in.
I guess I'll just add, another piece. I call it making a neshama choice, right? So there's basically three, when we make a decision, there's usually three elements that impact that choice. So Reuven said it very nicely, heart, head. So there's your physical drive, which is what feels good. So it feels good to hit snooze, right? It feels good to, maybe eat something that's not healthy, right? Then there's your ego, which is what looks good, right? So if I want to present myself a certain way, maybe it looks good to say this piece of Lashon Hara, so people will think like I'm in the know, right? Or to what? Post a story, right? Okay, right. That looks good, right? That's my ego. But the neshama actually wants to do what is good. And if you could break down for yourself, what's motivating me to do this? Right? Is it what feels good? Is it what looks good? Or is it because I know this really is good? And I think when we're able to ask ourselves that question, and of course you have to be very honest with oneself, right? Then you can actually identify what's motivating me right now. And it could be that I'm not ready to do what's good. I know it is good for me to, be, dressed in a way where I am very dignified. And this is where this head-heart sometimes, I might know what's good and I might not be ready emotionally, or it might not even be good for me to take it all on right now. Right? And sometimes you have to say, okay, so then what's really good? The neshama knows, right? If you're really honest, maybe I have to break it down in smaller steps. What's really good for me right now? Is it good for me? I just learned about Shabbat and I should now, next Shabbat, not do anything? Tell my parents, maybe you have to start with one step. Maybe I'm not going to go into a car this Shabbat. Maybe next week I'm not going to go, whatever, I don't know. You'll have to speak that over with somebody who knows you. But the neshama really does know what's good. And if you could really be honest with yourself and self-reflect, what's motivating me to make this choice right now? You can usually break it down into those three categories, and hopefully you'll be able to identify what's truly good and then make the right choice.
So I just want to do a very quick summary of everything that we just spoken about, okay? We spoke about happiness, or simcha, or making meaningful choices, purposeful choices. And we said ultimately that to be b'simcha, to find joy through difficult circumstances, is the process of making the best possible choices. The month of Adar is a month that challenges us to make those choices, that we are meant to express the best parts of who we are meant to be. We do this with family, friends, mentors. It's okay to feel moments of unhappiness, as long as you recognize there's a process in which you are building yourself, hopefully achieving what it is that you're meant to be achieving. Be mindful, my friends, that the most meaningful choices in your lives will be the ones that you choose. Every day that you choose to live a life of meaning and happiness is a day that you are bringing godliness into this world. And in that world, the Goyish Defense League doesn't have a choice. It doesn't have a chance. Thank you so much, everybody. Looking forward to
A big thank you to Rabbi Reuven and Nalini Ibragimov. A big salute to have you here. There will be